So today we are going over Microsoft Teams, which is kind of like this modern work environment that we've been going over in the cloud. Very excited to talk about that. And why are we moving to the cloud? Because expectations are shifting. So yesterday and today, kind of the workforce, the people who are coming in, they have different expectations of what they want to get out of their job. So yesterday's news is desks in offices. We were really used to having our setup in an office with everybody around, but now we're looking towards a more remote work environment. We're seeing a lot of people fleeing the cities now and moving to the suburbs, maybe moving to Long Island, upstate New York, South Jersey, wherever rent is cheaper. We're seeing a lot more remote employees. So not so many desks in offices. We want to have more options for people to work remotely. We are also very used to some on-prem equipment, some servers and all of that kind of in our office. And now we are seeing more and more people kind of interested in the cloud, software as a service, not really licensing equipment anymore, but really just downloading this software, logging in from any device and using it, which is really convenient, again, for working remotely. Yesterday's news, people were looking for stability, efficiency, and structure in their work environments, but now people are looking for flexibility. They're looking to innovate. They want to know how they can impact the communities that they're in. And to do that, we really got to get in the field. We got to get out there. All of our nonprofits, we know that you guys are out there in the field with your communities, and especially our construction partners. We know that you guys are building those communities. You know, we really want to give you all the tools to be able to do that to the best of your ability. And what better way to do that in the cloud? And lastly, we have people who are concerned with storage, computing, and data processing. So we are kind of more hands-off now, with more people being interested in artificial intelligence, automated processes, and business intelligence. We want to know how we can improve our workflow, work better, work smarter, work faster, work less. We definitely don't want to be hands-on with every part of our process, all parts of our workflow. So we want the cloud to help us. We want to work easier and to work less at things that we don't have to, and the cloud can help us. So again, maybe you're getting sick of this image, but it is really the model of our work environment. Our remote workforce is growing. We see a lot more people at home, and with that, we see a lot of our equipment moving to cloud solutions. Our file server with our shared drive and our personal drive now in the cloud, the domain controller, kind of that back end stuff, why you have F8. We're helping you get to the cloud. And even our phones, we have our own proprietary phone system. If you're not on it, you can definitely ask us about it. The SyncSpeak phone service in the cloud. We can even get your phone system in there. So let's take a look at what Microsoft and F8, how we can kind of help you move to the cloud. So with chat, we have Teams, which will help you communicate and store, collaborate in the cloud. We'll talk about how that is really your hub for communication and collaboration today. We have Outlook, which will replace email. We have that in the cloud. SharePoint, which is your shared drive. OneDrive, your personal drive. Azure, which is kind of that back-end stuff, what you have F8 for. And then a SyncSpeak phone service, which is the phone service in the cloud, voicemail, all that good stuff stored in the cloud, which is a conversation for another day, not really Microsoft, but still very exciting stuff that we definitely want to go over. So OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. Let's understand a little bit better our Microsoft modern work environment. So we want to talk about how we're going to be integrating Microsoft Teams into this environment that we were talking about before with OneDrive and SharePoint. So just a quick little recap on OneDrive and SharePoint. We know that OneDrive is our personal file storage with the option to share. And then SharePoint, we really want to use that for our shared file storage and for reference documents. Published final drafts go in SharePoint. And then we have Teams, which is kind of this in-between collaborative space. It's great for quick communication and collaborative file sharing. So you can store in Teams. There's a great integration there with SharePoint, which we'll talk about today. And depending on your file structure, you can really create it in Teams or recreate it in Teams if that's an option that you're looking into. We can take your file tree and replicate it in Teams or in SharePoint, whichever one you find works best for you. And we'll talk about that a little later, and I'll show you what that looks like when it's broken down into teams and channels. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. But just one more way to think of your spaces. We have different buckets, is a term that people are getting more and more familiar with using. You can think of these spaces as buckets. So we have these buckets on the left here, which are OneDrive and Teams, and those are kind of our drafting, editing, and collaborative spaces. And then we have another bucket, SharePoint, which is our publishing space. So This is where final drafts go, where in SharePoint final drafts, and then we have OneDrive and Teams, which are kind of like drafting and editing spaces. And another way that you can think of this is OneDrive is my stuff, Teams is of course your team stuff, and then SharePoint is kind of where everyone's stuff. So depending on what you want to do with your documents, that's where you want to open them. So first we'll go over OneDrive, and this is a private drive to store your personal work files or your initial drafts until you're ready to share. So if your job is to start a draft of a proposal or anything like that, you'll want to start it in OneDrive until you're ready to bring it to your team to collaborate on, see if there's any points that you missed, anything that you want to include. But then when you're ready, you will open it up in Teams, and we'll show you how to kind of move these documents around in a little bit. But just to get you thinking about how you'll use these platforms, I'm going to go over these spaces. So once you have that document and you're ready to collaborate on it with your team, you'll move it to your team stuff. And this is really a collaborative space. This is where you'll be working on the same kind of documents or projects, and everybody in Teams will have similar or the same permissions, because you all want to be able to work seamlessly and without restrictions. You don't want to be barred from editing or anything like that. And you have equal contribution among members. You really want to make sure that everybody on a team is going to either be contributing the same, or maybe you have a department head on there or something just to oversee what's going on in the team. But you really want to make sure that everybody in the team has a purpose there. You don't want, too many team members and not a lot of people contributing. So that's just a word on that. And then lastly, you have SharePoint, which is everybody's space. It's where everybody's stuff goes. This is where organization-wide documents go, operational manuals, things that you want to reference. Maybe templates will be saved there, things that are depending on the site. I mean, if you have a general site for your entire organization where everybody can reference operational manuals or HR documents, things like that, you can definitely keep that on one site. And then you can have department sites, which are general to each department. And again, you can have templates there, things that you need to reference often. Those kinds of documents can be kept in SharePoint to kind of like a reference library. You can check them out and then kind of put them back. You don't really want to edit them unless a yearly edit where you kind of take it every year and you change it. But that's a little bit on that. And you want to think of that space as not everybody is, depending on how you use SharePoint. Maybe you want to use that as your shared drive and not really, we'll get into that later. But this is where you don't have everybody saving to SharePoint in these reference libraries unless it's document library where you have things that are coming in and out. When you create teams, you'll have these kinds of libraries where things are getting touched a lot. But as far as publishing, you definitely want to have a different folder or a library for things that you definitely don't want touched or edited. So that's that. Teams does give you the ability to share documents and folders internally and externally, but we do want to make sure that you're sharing responsibly. And to do this, we want you to do three things, which is define, decide, and develop. The first thing, define. We want you to define what confidential information is. We want to make sure that everybody in your company or organization knows what definitely cannot be leaked, what you don't want anybody else seeing outside your organization. Make it clear. So define that. Then we want you to decide what will be stored and shared in Teams, what you're going to use this app for, if you're going to be using it for internal sharing only, and if you use it for external sharing, how will you share externally securely? Maybe you want to create a team just for external sharing. That's definitely something that you can do. Definitely a way that you can make sure that you are not mistakenly putting private company data or things that you don't want shared in a team for internal purposes only. You definitely maybe want to create a team just for external sharing. You can definitely consult with us on that if that is something that you decide if you want to use this platform for external sharing. And then lastly, you'll develop policies for sharing and collaborating in Teams, and these policies will be company-wide and everybody will know what you're going to be using Teams for, what can go in there, and how to use the app appropriately. So that's a little bit about security and sharing safely. And now I really want to get into Microsoft Teams and how it can be really a central place for you to communicate and collaborate. First, we're going to go over some functions in Teams, and I'm going to introduce you to the idea of teams and channels. If you were with us at the very beginning of this series, you will have seen the core 4, and I'm going to give you a quick review on those functions now. So the first one was chat, then we had video conferencing and screen sharing, and lastly, we had file sharing. So those are the functions that we went over previously in another Lunch and Learn, and those all took place under the chat tab. But today we're going to move to the Teams tab, and you'll see the screen kind of change the look of it here, and you have some more functions in Teams. You still have the capability to do pretty much everything that you were doing in the chat tab, but now we're working in teams. So you see on the left-hand side of my screen there, I have a bunch of different teams. We're going to be working in the demo team today. That's where I have kind of everything going on for our lesson. The first function that I want to go over is the app function. So this is kind of to call someone out, to speak to someone directly in a team. Maybe somebody made an edit and you want to talk with them directly about whatever it is that you want to address them for. So you'll type @ and then you'll get some suggestions. So here we see Teresa. I can click Teresa, it will say @Teresa, and I will be able to, much like Twitter, if anybody's using Twitter, you can kind of @ someone and they will get a notification that, hey, you were called out in this chat. Maybe you want to take a look at what's going on in there. So that's a good way to kind of get someone's attention in a team. And then you also have the ability to reply directly to a comment or a post on here. So we see up here on the data security app, the data security document that I shared in here, you can speak directly to that document. So this is great if you haven't checked in for a little while and you go back into your team and you're reading through the chats. How many times has this happened to you? I know it happens to me quite often. And you go back and you wanted to say something about whatever topic it was, and it took place, yesterday, and now we're talking about something else. You can go back to that document or to that post, whatever, and kind of say, hey, a word on that, just a suggestion, and you can talk. You can kind of go back to that point and speak on that, which is really great for department heads or admins who are not always in the day-to-day operations, but maybe you check in on your team and kind of give your input and give your 2 cents on things that are going on there. So that's a great way to stay in touch with your team and keep current on everything. And then, of course, we do have the ability to share files in here as well. And this one integration here, we see that we can upload files right from our OneDrive to a team, not just to chat, but also to our team, which is really great, again, for drafting and then collaborating. So I do want to speak more on files in just a moment, but I first want to talk about using Teams as your hub, and I want to talk about this tab a little bit more. So first, we see all of our teams in here, but I want to break down what makes up a team. So here we have the demo team. I'm just going to zoom in on that. So the team is demo, and of course it's demo, we're demonstrating how Teams work, so that's why we are using this channel, demo, and then we see 3 channels underneath. So general is where general kind of conversations go. All teams are kind of loaded up with this channel already, and then as you go further, you can add as many channels as you'd like. So we have Mystery Machine Inc. and Snack Food Inc. in here. So these may be projects that my team is working on, and these will generate folders in SharePoint. So each team will create a site, and then each channel will create a folder, and I will break that down for you in just a moment. But if you want to start thinking about a file tree, if you've seen your organization or your company's file tree, you have a root folder, and then you have subfolders. So you can think of demo as kind of your root folder, and then you have channels, which are your subfolders. So just like you would have projects folder, root folder, and then you would have each client or however you separate it in subfolders, works very, very similarly. So not messy, very clean kind of way to organize your projects. So again, let's go back to this files tab. So this is where I want us to focus for a moment. So in files, you see in our previous Lunch and Learns, you know that you can create new or upload files in here, or you can open in SharePoint from here. So if we open in SharePoint from this screen here, it brings us right to the SharePoint site. We're in the demo site. And if we put these libraries side by side, we see in Teams and in SharePoint, they look very similar, but if we really put them side by side, we see that the content is exactly the same. So whatever you do in Teams is going to reflect in SharePoint, and that's really helpful for us. It's one less step, it's available to us, and then we can kind of move things around from this SharePoint site to a more permanent site once things are in their final stages of drafting. So that makes our lives a lot easier. So this is where I'm going to show you kind of the breakdown of teams and channels and also the sites. So each team will create a site. So that's what the URL will look like. And as we create different channels, they will create folders in SharePoint. And just going down here, we see that every time we have general, which we don't have to create, comes loaded up in there. We see that it generates different URLs, and these are folders. So that's how it kind of looks side by side here. If you know what your file tree looks like, you'll know that this looks very similar to how that goes. So again, breaking down the file tree there. And now we're going to talk about Teams as your hub and using Teams as a central communication and collaboration platform. This is the document lifecycle. So this is, again, just how I want you to start thinking about how your documents will move through these applications. So your personal drive, OneDrive, that's your drafting, that's your place where you're going to start drafting your documents, and then you'll move into Teams, which is your collaborative space, and then of course eventually it'll move to SharePoint. And now, as you've seen, Teams and SharePoint have this kind of relationship where documents kind of flow back and forth between Teams and SharePoint, and how they appear also is very similar in Teams and both in SharePoint. So you can kind of move these documents back and forth. Maybe you need to keep working on something, move it back to Teams, and then of course you can move it back to SharePoint for reference. Of course, you can take a template out of there. You want to save it as a new template. You don't want to edit something that's already published and for reference, but you definitely want to take it out, save it as a new document, and work on it in Teams. So that is the flow of a document, just to give you a little insight on how you can kind of use these platforms. And now I'm going to give you a use case. So this is how I'm going to show you a document moving through these platforms now. So first, you're going to use Teams to access your files. And that's really, we went over this, just a little recap. You can open in SharePoint, or this is another more advanced way of doing it. You can click on this little plus sign at the top here, and you can add a document library from SharePoint. So you can add the entire document library by clicking on, we see demo here, and it's just a different way of accessing at that point. It will bring you to the exact same site as before, the demo site that we saw before. Or you can use a SharePoint link, and this will be just for a specific folder in SharePoint. Maybe there's a folder that you guys are accessing a lot, or that you have a lot of data saved in that you are constantly referencing, and you just want to kind of put that at the top of your page. And it's an easier way to kind of access things that are in SharePoint, so you don't have to go through the process the whole time, every time that you want to access something. So secondly, you're going to start your draft and save it in OneDrive. So here we see that we're creating a blog post. When we turn on autosave, it's going to prompt us to save to a cloud location, and we want you to choose OneDrive. That's what we do. It's a great way to make sure that all your work is being saved and backed up to your personal drive. So we always turn on autosave, make sure that that's on, and then it will be in your OneDrive. You'll be able to access it. And if you don't remember exactly how to do that, we do have the training on OneDrive, which kind of walks you through it. So the next thing that you want to do is move to Teams to collaborate. And in here, you'll click on that little paperclip at the bottom there, or you can go to the Files tab and hit Upload. This is the way that I usually do it. Personally, I just share it here. Click on the little paperclip, then you'll click OneDrive, then you'll select the document that you want to share in the chat. It'll pop up in here, and then you'll click that little paper airplane at the bottom there, and which is the send button. It'll send off, and now we have it in our chat. If you click on the little ellipses next to that document, once you send it, you can choose where you'd like to edit it. If you do choose to edit in Teams, that's a great way to do things. It's a really easy way to collaborate. All the changes will happen in real time. You'll see where each other are in the document. You'll have little flags popping up all over the place. And you can also do that in the browser. In the desktop app, it works a little differently. If one person's in the desktop app and another person's in the browser, the changes aren't as instantaneous. The person in the desktop app will have to click the little floppy disk, which is the sync save button. And then those changes will reflect. They'll take a few seconds, maybe even a few minutes, depending on your connection. So if you do want to see those changes happening in real time, we do suggest that you use the browser. We understand a lot of people, especially if you're using Excel, not always the best to use the online version. Sometimes you want the full functionality of the app, and it's best to do it in the desktop version. That's absolutely acceptable, perfectly fine. You just want to make sure that you're hitting that sync save button to make sure that everything is syncing and available to your team across all the platforms. So a little note on that. So then if we go into files, we see that it also does here in our files there, and it'll say how long ago that it was added. So if you check back in with your team, you can just go into files and see if anything has been uploaded or shared recently while you've been away, however you want. And again, we are in the demo team and the general channel. I really want you guys to get used to those kind of terms. If this is maybe a way that you see your organization or your company using this platform, I really want you to get used to using those words. And of course, we open in SharePoint right there. Very, very simple integration. So then you want to store in SharePoint for reference. And we see that our document is in there. And a quick way to do this, I'm going to show you just a fast way to kind of move things from this document library, from your demo document library, you're in your channel, your general folder in here. If you just click these 3 little dots next to it, you'll get this menu, and then you can move this document, and you can choose which document library you'd like to move it to. So if you have something that's specific to your department just for reference, you can move that document into that library, and that way everybody can edit it anymore. If you do want to save 2 copies, you want to save one, if you want to save it to SharePoint, and then you want to save one to Teams, so that way you guys can keep editing it further and then resave it to SharePoint. Definitely a way that you can use it. You just want to make sure that you are not editing your final product there, that you don't want to change anything, because you want to make sure that you can reference an accurate document. So just make sure that your team is aware of where they are sharing and where they are saving as well. And now I do want to talk again about this document lifecycle. This is just another way of looking at it. We start in our OneDrive, and then we move to Teams, and then we move to SharePoint. Now that you see how the flow of a document kind of moves, I want to give you another kind of scenario where you are moving from your personal drive to Teams and then to SharePoint. And we spoke, of course, how this document can kind of move back and forth between SharePoint and Teams, but I also want to let you know that you can definitely take something from SharePoint for yourself and then move it to your OneDrive. That's definitely an option. That's definitely something that you can do if you are working off a template where you need to create a proposal or something and you want to use something from SharePoint for reference. Definitely take it from there. Make sure that you're not editing, again, the final draft, because you definitely want to be able to reference that accurately. You can definitely move from SharePoint to OneDrive. There's no reason why you can't. You just don't want to skip Teams. You definitely want to make sure that you're having your team look at it. It's a really easy way to collaborate on there, and make sure that you're getting the feedback that you need to have a good draft saved for reference. So again, that's just the movement from your personal drive to a shared drive, and really back anywhere that you need that document. So why are we using Teams? It's great. You can edit it. You can edit your documents in any app. It will sync across all of your apps, all of your Office applications, Word, PowerPoint, all those fun apps that we've been using all these years. It's centralized communications. It's a place where you can kind of meet. There's a meet now button. If you guys are all talking, you find that you're all there and you're just not able to communicate effectively, you can just hit meet now. You can all talk. You can all video chat together. It's centralized communication. Really, really great for collaboration. We use Teams all the time, especially for screen sharing. Call it a live edit where we kind of get on the phone and we're screen sharing and we kind of go back and forth and go over everything that we need to go through. Really, really great for that. And it's super simple collaboration. It's all right there. It's all right there at your fingertips, and it's all in Teams. If you have Microsoft 365 or Office 365 for Business, then you have Teams. You have all these capabilities. Just do it. Just move there, and we're there to help you. You can call us up, and if you have any questions, you can definitely ask us, how is this going to work for my organization? This is what my file structure looks like. How can we kind of replicate it either in Teams or in SharePoint? What's that going to look for us? And we can definitely talk you through it. That's what we're here for. If we're not here for anything else, then how can we help you? So Teams is where you can stay connected, stay organized, and get things done together. And thank you so much for joining me today. It was great speaking with you. I was really excited to get this training to all of you guys today. And I hope to see you guys next time. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.